Hello dear learner, I welcome you to the lecture 1 of week 4 and the topic of today's lecture is Marxism. So before I start my lecture, I would like to give you a brief overview of the topics and concepts to be covered in today's lecture. The first is what is the origin of Marxism, and we will know a bit about Karl Marx. Then we will see the important differences between the young writings of Marx and the old Marx writings. Then we will see that how Marx made a critique of utopian socialism, and on the basis of that criticism he gave his own concept of scientific socialism. Then we will understand how Hegel has so greatly influenced the writings and political philosophy of Karl Marx. After that, we will understand the materialistic interpretation of history as given by Karl Marx, and then we will understand how Marx has analyzed the capitalist society in terms of two important concepts, and that is base and superstructure. So with this brief introduction about the topics to be covered in today's lecture, I would start with the first point, which is from where the Marxism has come. As it is very clear from the word itself, Marxism derives its name from Karl Marx, who was born in 1818. He was a famous German economist and social philosopher who is the chief exponent of this theory, as it is very clear that it is on his name that his ideas and philosophy, it became famous as Marxism. Now Karl Marx, along with his friend and comrade Friedrich Engels, who was a young German businessman, laid down a set of political and economic principles that established the scientific foundations of socialism. Because Karl Marx believed that we have to understand the causes of suffering in the capitalist society from a scientific perspective, and we should aim at transformation of the society based on certain scientific principles. Therefore, he has said that he is giving a scientific explanation of the critiques of the capitalist society and the transformation which is to be required, and therefore his socialism is termed as the scientific principles of socialism. Now Marxism first appeared in the middle of the 19th century in response to the oppressive conditions created by the capitalist system. As we have already read in our week 1, in the various slides, we have already discussed that how the critical thinkers have criticized various sufferings of the modern society, and especially the various exploitative practices of the capitalist society and its repercussion on the individual lives. And I have also explained that how those critical thinkers were influenced by Karl Marx. So I would say that Karl Marx was one of those first thinkers who not only analyzed the various features of capitalist system, but also made a severe critique of the implications of such system on individual's life. And also he could predicate that we can have transformation and revolution and replace the present capitalist society with a socialist form of system. Now besides Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, we have some other very important proponents of Marxism. The chief includes V.I. Lenin, who was a Russian revolutionary and thinker, Rosa Luxemburg, a Polish activist, and Mao Zedong, a Chinese revolutionary and thinker. We know that the type of Marxism or communism which was propounded and practiced by Mao, it came to be known as Maoism. Now, like liberalism, Marxism has also become an umbrella ideology, because like liberalism, we find that in the case of Marxism also, there are so many shades and there are so many interpretations, there are so many different lights in which it can be interpreted, that it has become an umbrella term, which includes under its canvas a wide varieties which highlight some or other aspects of Marxist thought. I think it is very important to understand that there are two aspects of Marxism. One is the writings of Marx, which was written in his early times or in his youth, and the writings of Marx, which was written at the later phase of his life. And there is a very important difference in this. We know that the older Marxism is also known as the classical Marxism, and in that Marx has made an in-depth study of the workings of capitalism from economic perspective. Now we will see in the subsequent lectures in what ways or arguments Marx has made a severe critique of the capitalist society from economic perspective. Now if we talk about the younger Marx has talked about alienation, which is another implication of the capitalist society on individuals' lives. He has explained the subtle aspects of domination. Now economic exploitation is more, it is apparent and it is manifest, but there are certain types of exploitation which are subtle, which are hidden, which are not explicit in the sense of the term. And he has highlighted those problems of modern civilization and also the possible ways to human freedom. So these are two aspects of Marx. And I have already explained in my week 1 lecture that all the critical theorists have basically drawn from this, the younger Marx or the earlier Marx, who had made a detailed understanding of alienation and the process of reification in the society, and how that is the after effect or the psychological consequences of domination and exploitation in the society. Now it is not that only Karl Marx has made a study of capitalism, or he is the only person to make a critique of capitalism. Now before Karl Marx, there were many other socialist thinkers who had tried to understand the nature and problems of capitalist society, how it has produced class divisions, how the structure of economy has led to the problems of poverty, unemployment, and along with this it has also promoted selfish and acquisitive tendencies amongst the individuals. So then how they are different from Karl Marx or Marxism? One of the very important difference between these socialist thinkers and Karl Marx's understanding was that the early thinkers or the utopian socialists, they understood things in utopian terms. They did not foresee a drastic change or transformation of the capitalist society, whereas Karl Marx was very important in the sense that he could foresee the destruction of capitalism, because they believed that the seeds of destruction are within itself, and those seeds will itself responsible for the destruction of capitalism in the subsequent time. Now all the utopian socialists, they believed in bringing about changes in the capitalist structure by appealing to human brotherhood and solidarity. They believed that with the change in heart or in the change in mindsets or by making certain laws and regulations, they believe that these changes can take place in the society and the capitalist system will at the end yield to the needs of the common man. But it did not happen, and therefore these socialists have been termed as utopian socialists, because they believed in the imagination that one day people will change and they will yield to the needs and demands of the society. Now Karl Marx was the first person who advocated that the destruction of capitalism was inevitable, as it had itself given rise to its own grave diggers. Now this is a very important prophecy which was made by Karl Marx, because earlier than him nobody could foresee and visualize that such a thing will happen. He could visualize that in the days to come certain crises or dialectics will develop in capitalism which will lead to its own destruction, and in the subsequent slides we will see that what were those crises of capitalism about which Karl Marx is talking about. Now before we go into the further details of Marxist philosophy, I would like to talk about the influences on Karl Marx and especially the influence of a very important philosopher Hegel. As we all know that the concept of dialectics has been taken by Karl Marx from Hegel, but he has interpreted and used the notion of dialectics in his own way, which we will see after some time. And the second important influence was the French revolutionary tradition, because witnessed the French Revolution and he found that how for certain human ideals like freedom, liberty and justice, the mankind can unite, the people can unite and fight together against injustices, against monarchical system. So that actually helped in forming an impression in the higher potentialities of human being or in the higher potentialities of man to bring about change and transformation in their present condition. So he was greatly influenced by the French Revolution. And the third important influence on Karl Marx was England's economic system. We know that during the period in which he was writing, at that time England was a superpower, and that England was the epitome of an advanced capitalist society. And Karl Marx believed that if we study the England's capitalist system, then we can very well understand the features and also the sufferings which people are facing in that system. So he considered England's system as a role model and believed that if the capitalist system it spreads to other countries of the world, then they will also develop the same features. So he considered England as an ideal model to study if somebody wants to study about the capitalist system. So now, as I have just said that Karl Marx has borrowed from Hegel's dialectic method, but there is a very important difference, because unlike Hegel, who used dialectic method or process in the context of ideas, Karl Marx interpreted it and applied it to material world. He also used the concept to understand the flow of history or to understand the development of history or historical phenomena. Now let us see that what we mean by dialectic. Now dialectic is an interpretive method in which contradiction between a proposition thesis and its antithesis is resolved at a higher level of truth, which is synthesis. So there are three processes in the method of dialectics. One is the thesis, which is the prevalent proposition or ideas, and in response or reaction to that ideas, if another set of ideas it develops, then it is antithesis, and by the clash or between the clash of these two ideas, the resultant new idea which comes out, it is a synthesis. Both Hegel and Marx believe that now this method or this process is a way in which the society develops or the history develops. But there is a very important difference between Marx and Hegel, because Marx interpreted and used the dialectics as a method to understand the historical development in terms of the material conditions which was prevalent at a particular point of time in history. Whereas Hegel considered the flow of ideas and applied the method of dialectics to understand how ideas moves across the history. Now Marx made a materialistic interpretation of history, as I have just said, where he argued that economic production it determines the historical phenomena. So here he is slightly different from Hegel, because here he is saying that if we see the evolution of human history, if we see the development of human history, then we find that all the phases of human history has been determined, and the type of development which have taken place like social, cultural and political development, they all are influenced by the economic structure. So therefore he believed that economic production determines the historical phenomena, and therefore this theory is known as the materialistic interpretation of history. That means he understood history in terms of material or in terms of the economic system. Now for Hegel, national culture was the driving force of history. As I have just said that there is a fundamental difference between Hegel and Karl Marx in terms of application of dialectics, because Hegel believed that national culture was the driving force of history, whereas for Karl Marx, antagonism among social classes was the driving force of change, or it was responsible for historical phenomena or historical development. So, social class was the unit of analysis in the case of Karl Marx, whereas in the case of Hegel it was national culture. Then another very important influence on Karl Marx was the philosophy that thought does not precede existence, it was existence that preceded thought. Now, this is a very important line, and that is why I have made it bold so that you understand the importance of this line. Thought does not precede existence, it was existence that preceded thought. That means that our material conditions determines our thought and the ideas which are prevalent at any particular point of time. So, if we have to change our thought processes, we have to bring about changes in our material conditions. So, this is a very important proposition or argument which was given by Karl Marx and which helped us in understanding a particular type of political system, cultural system or social system at any point of time in history. It is always because of the type of economic system. So, it is not the ideas which determines our existence. He believed that on the contrary, our material conditions or the type of material conditions we have at a particular point of time in history, it will determine the type of ideas, thought processes which are prevalent at that time in the society. Then Marx had made a very important argument that what is the role of philosophy. In his words, he said, the philosophy have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. So, we have already made lots of interpretation. There are many theories which are explanatory, which are descriptive in nature. But now we need such theories, or in other words, we need such theories which are critical of the present situation or circumstances or the social conditions, and they should tell how to change it. So, if you want to bring about the change in the social conditions, if you want to bring about change in the economic conditions, we have to not only explain, but we also have to find out ways to change it. And the elements of critical theory were very much prevalent or were very much in existence in the Marxist analysis or in the way in which he is interpreting the role of philosophy. And in the week 1, I have already explained that all the critical thinkers have argued that the philosophy should be combined with social action. Otherwise, both if they are studied in isolation, it will not be complete in itself. Now, another very important analysis of society which was done by Karl Marx was that he divided society into two parts. The first was the base or the foundation, which he considered as the economic system. He considered economic system as the base of the society, and whatever be the base and whatever be the nature of the economic system will determine the superstructure which rises above the base, and that superstructure includes all other things which are besides the economic system. That includes state, laws, government, art, culture, philosophy, etc. And the most important argument made about the relationship between base and superstructure by Karl Marx was that the economic base conditions and determines the nature of superstructure. So, it is not simply the division of society into two parts, but it also says that it is the economic base which is a primary unit and others are the dependent variable, and they determine the type of political structure, culture or other things in the society. The mode of production form the real foundation of society, which consists of means of production and relations of production. Now, Karl Marx talked about three important things, and the first is the mode of production, which includes the means of production like technology, labor and capital, and the relations of production means the type of property relation or the type of or the nature of the civil society which is prevalent at any particular point of time. Now, Karl Marx has said in German ideology, and I quote his words, "It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but on the contrary, their social existence that determines their consciousness. It's a very, very important statement to understand the entire philosophy of Karl Marx, because he is actually repeatedly saying that we have to make a practical analysis of the problems or the domination which we are facing today, and for that we have to make an understanding of the social existence in which we are living, and that how that plays a very important role in determining our consciousness, our thoughts, our ideas. Now, changes in the forces of production brings it into conflict with the relations of production or property relation, which by the process of dialectic leads to transformation. So, the next important argument given by Karl Marx is that whenever there is change in the means of production, it comes into conflict with the already prevalent the relations of production, and there occurs a conflict or crisis, and by the process of dialectics it leads to the formation of a new concept or a new society or a new but the relations of production, which leads to transformation, which leads to change. Now, the changes in the base brings about changes in the superstructure of the society also. So, now if there is a change in the base, there is also a change in the superstructure. So, he identified 5 stages of historical development. First is primitive communism, slavery, feudalism, then capitalism, and the last is communism. If we leave behind the primitive communism and communism, we find that all the other 3 stages of history have been divided into 2 classes. One is the haves and the other is the haves not. We will see in more details in the subsequent slides and lecture. So, if transformation in the society is to be brought about, there should be transformation in the prevailing economic conditions, which I have already explained. So, Karl Marx made a study of Western capitalist society and the type of sufferings it has produced, and he sought to replace it with first by socialism and then by communism. So, in the subsequent slides and lectures, we will be talking about Karl Marx's critique of capitalism. With that, I come to the end of this lecture. Now, there are certain activity questions before you. I hope you will read them and you will be able to answer them. These questions are based on the topics or on the concepts which we have covered. Now, as I have already said, that the objective of this lecture and course is to steer your imagination and thinking. Do you think that our existence determines our thoughts in the present society also? What, according to your opinion, can be the base and superstructure in the society? Can you find out what are the relations of production in the contemporary society? Do you believe that the transformation in the society can be achieved only by changing the economic conditions? So, these are some of the questions which I have put forward to you so that you can think about and answer based on your imagination and thinking. Now, there are a couple of books which I have recommended. If it is possible, you must read, and the first is a monumental work by Karl Marx, which is Das Kapital. It is in 3 volumes. If you get an opportunity, if you want to really know the teachings of Karl Marx in detail, you must read this work. Then the second is the joint work by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which is titled The Communist Manifesto. It was published in 1848. Then Karl Marx Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844. Besides that, there are other works of Marx also, which you can, if it is possible for you, you must refer. Then there is another book on Marx, Leszek Kolakowski, titled Main Currents in Marxism. It is also in 3 volumes. It is published by Clarendon Press, Oxford. So, I would recommend you, if possible, to read these books for your further reading, for your further enhancement of knowledge. So, with this, I come to the end of this lecture. I hope you have enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you very much.